Michael Elliott, and our next guest is Larry Magid. Larry is technology journalist and an internet safety advocate. Welcome, Larry.
Thank you, Michael.
Could you please, for our audience, just give a brief background of your history and your experience?
Well, you know, I got a doctorate degree in education in 1981, which is showing my age. And
when you were 5.
When I was 5 years old.
Exactly.
And I bought a computer, an early Apple II, in order to write my dissertation, and I realized that I had more fun with the computer than I had with the dissertation. So I came out to California completely jobless, with no prospects, but I stumbled into a company that asked me to write a manual, and it turned out it was one of the manuals that IBM shipped with the original PC. So that got me off to a great start. And the next thing I did is I stumbled into this magazine. It seemed like a really dumb idea, a magazine dedicated to a single computer. But PC Magazine hired me as a gopher, and the next thing I knew, there was a dispute between the editor and the publisher, and I became editor of PC Magazine very early in the game. And then from there, I went on to start a training company, a computer called Know-How, and then to become a columnist for the LA Times, syndicated in papers around the country. That lasted about almost 20 years. And then I went on to write for the New York Times, and in the meantime, picked up some work with CBS News. So today, I am the technology analyst for CBS News, mostly on radio. You can hear me on about 600 stations around the country. And as well as that, I do some other work. I think you're going to talk about that later.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got an incredible depth of experience. Love to talk to you in relation to Internet of Things and the security aspect and ConnectSafely.org.
Yeah, so ConnectSafely.org is a nonprofit that I helped create about 6 or 7 years ago during what we call the predator panic days, when MySpace existed and when, what was that TV show about To Catch a Predator was on the air. Everybody was worried about the internet. Oh, it's so dangerous. And you know, having been involved in internet safety prior to that, I wrote a booklet 20 years ago on internet safety. I realized that, yeah, there are some dangers associated with the internet, but it fundamentally wasn't that dangerous. And the predator issue was so overhyped and over-exaggerated. So we created ConnectSafely to provide parent education, to really focus on what are the real risks and the real solutions. And it really comes down to mostly common sense, but educating young people on how to safely use technology, and older people too, by the way, not just kids.
Yeah.
Trolling and adult harassment is still an issue. So we work very closely with Facebook, Google, Yahoo, Microsoft, all the major companies, and now we are the U.S. host of Safer Internet Day, a big celebration that will take place February 10th. We're going to have it at the Facebook headquarters in Menlo Park. Can't announce all the speakers. We may have a big surprise, but we're pretty happy to announce that Attorney General Kamala Harris, California Attorney General Kamala Harris, will be one of our keynoters. But it's a chance for young people and old to really focus on safety. It's a global celebration. We're leading the U.S. charge, but it's happening globally in about 100 countries around the world, all on Tuesday, February 10th.
So let's shift gears and go into what do we need to think about when we talk about the Internet of Things and online security? What do consumers really need to focus on now?
I think CES is a good name for this show. Used to be called the Consumer Electronics Show. I want to call it the Connected Electronics Show. Because as I walked around this show, just about everything, including toothbrushes, pacifiers, baby bottles, you name it, had a Bluetooth or Wi-Fi or NFC or some kind of connection that goes off to a phone and then goes off to the cloud. So we really need to think about security, privacy, and safety on the Internet of Things. And that ranges from everything for what's happening with information about my teeth as I brush. Is that information going into the wrong place? What's the possibility of someone hacking my car? And these drones, I think drones are terrific, but somebody has to make sure they don't crash into each other, regular aircraft, and of course people on the ground. So there's a lot of issues around safety, privacy, and security when it comes to the Internet of Things. And ConnectSafely is looking into how can we help. If we were able to kind of work very hard on getting the country to really rethink issues about predators and bullying and some of these issues, can we do the same for the Internet of Things, which is to encourage the innovation, but at the same time making sure that consumers, government, and industry are all doing their best to have a rational approach to it.
Well, you brought up a point in there around privacy. And drones flying over, but can you elaborate a little bit more around privacy on that?
Well, privacy on everything. Drones, obviously, if you're flying a drone over somebody's backyard, there's a real privacy issue, right? But any connected device can be hacked, or the information can be misused, either by the vendor, him or herself, itself, if the vendor isn't acting responsibly, or because the user isn't acting responsibly in terms of protecting their privacy, but using the privacy tools, or the potential of a hacker, which is a security problem, but then it becomes a privacy problem if the information gets in the wrong place. So, simple example, my phone knows where I am, which means I have an Android, Google knows where I am. That's all well and good as long as Google is remaining as a good corporate citizen. It's all well and good as long as there's nobody hacking my phone. And it's all well and good as long as there isn't somebody who might harm me or embarrass me or have information that I don't want them to have, doesn't have access to that. And there are ways that one could accidentally disclose their information. Nothing to do with hacks. I mean, I could, for example, use one of these friend-finding programs, share it with you, and then you and I have a big fight. We're no longer buddies. Unless I have disabled it, you might still have access to my location. And so you need to really think about this with all of our technology.
So what should we start doing then?
Well, we should start really understanding the privacy and security tools associated with all of our products. And industry needs to make these much easier to use and understand. So industry has a role, consumers have a role, and government has a role to regulate lightly and intelligently. To not over-regulate, but to keep an eye, make sure that we have transparency, make sure that companies stick to what they say they're going to do. The Federal Trade Commission is good about that. But at the same time, not stifle innovation with so much regulation that's specific to a technology, like the idea of requiring a private pilot's license to fly a drone. I actually have a private pilot's license. The irony is, that doesn't even qualify me to fly a drone. It qualifies me to fly a little plane. I mean, you know, we need to really be much more rational in how we approach regulation, and that's part of what we at ConnectSafely try to do.
So broadband network operators that really provide that internet access, increasingly for their subscribers, smart objects, what should they start doing and thinking about?
It's a very good question, and Comcast is one of our supporters. They really need to understand that they are essentially the gatekeeper. They can't control everything. In fact, they can't control most things that go through their network. But they can provide consumer education. They can make sure that there's a level playing field so that all players, big and small, have an equal playing field. And they can really make sure that their network is as secure as it can possibly be. But at the end of the day, we live in an ecosystem that's very complicated. Remember the day when the phone company controlled everything you did with the phone? Literally, if you wanted to download an app from Verizon, you had to download it from Verizon. Then the iPhone came along. Changed the game completely. Now we have all of these app developers riding on top of our smartphones, and frankly, the cellular companies can no longer control what happens on their networks. And so they have to provide consumer education, and they have to do what they can to make sure vendors are using it. And when things get really bad, maybe there are ways that they can cut off some bad actors.
So besides just those players, what responsibility is there downstream from that?
There's a huge amount of responsibility. Parents need to be educated to educate their children. We all need to start being a little kinder online. One of ConnectSafely's projects is called One Good Thing, where we're actually encouraging people to tell us about positive things that are happening online. How have you used your technology to combat bullying? How have you used your cell phone to document that a park might need cleaning up? And then Facebook or Twitter to get people to come do that. We need to emphasize and start understanding that this technology is almost exclusively for the good. I said almost.
Almost.
It doesn't take very many bad actors, right? We see what's happening in the world today, in the physical world. I mean, what happened, you know, back during CES over in Paris. I mean, there are bad actors, but there's so few of them. And so we need to get the rest of us as smart as we possibly can. Sometimes it can't be perfect. I cannot guarantee you possible security. So if Sony can get hacked, if Target can get hacked, anybody can get hacked. But at the same time, let's not give them low-hanging fruit. If we have to use passwords, and I think they should be broken and replaced, but if we have to, let's use secure passwords. Let's change them periodically. Let's not use the same password for every site and app we go to. And let's start having industry work on biometrics and other authentication schemes, multi-factor authentication, things so we can have real security. Because right now we have a real problem, and it's evident when you look at some of these famous hack attacks that we've seen over the past year or two.
So, last question to wrap it up. Kind of as we look forward, any final thoughts on what we're going to see and thoughts around that?
We're going to see the most incredible explosion of technology. If you think that what happened between 1990 and 2014 was impressive, fasten your seatbelt. This Internet of Things, this new direction, this idea of connected everything is going to change the world in ways that we can't even imagine. And we as individuals, as companies, as parents, and as policymakers need to be on top of it, need to understand it, need to let it happen, but at the same time make sure that it happens in a way that's safe and secure.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Larry.